R12-17. It's a U.S. constitutional amendment. Commissioner Cody.
Mr. Chairman, this is the revised resolution from the one that we dealt with last month when we met up at the Scotts Creek area. This resolution is revised to take into account the concerns that were mentioned by some of the commissioners at that meeting, having to do with unions, labor unions, limited liability companies, and PACs. I don't know what the PAC is. It's one that can receive unlimited money from any source, not have to divulge where the funds came from, and not have to account to anybody for how they're spent. Mr. Chairman, rather than me make the same old one-out speech that you folks heard last month, I'd like to request that at least 2 or 3 members of the audience who requested this personally, and I assume you probably seen it in the paper as well, they'd be allowed to speak maybe 3 minutes each on this resolution prior to our vote rather than after.
Would they be willing to forego their time? Would you like Mr. Friedman, Mr. Lomax, and Mr. Nowak?
Yes. Yes, those are the 3.
Be allowed to speak?
Well, I would like to speak during the public comment period and
Free speech, you know.
I didn't, what was that, Mr. Friedman?
I will speak afterwards in the public comment period. I'm not prepared to speak during.
Oh, okay. So, Mr. Lomax?
Yes, that would be fine.
All right. Would you come forward, Mr. Lomax?
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Alan Lomax, a property owner and resident of Jackson County, an investment consultant and officer of 2 corporations. At the previous commissioners meeting, Commissioner Cody opposed the resolution to end corporate personhood on the basis that labor unions were not included. To address that issue, the resolution has been revised to include labor unions, political action committees, and for-profit and non-profit corporations referred to collectively as artificial entities, and presented today for approval. On many levels, most Americans have the uneasy sense that our republic is no longer of, by, and for we the people. But finally, people are saying enough and have begun working to amend the U.S. Constitution to remove the problematic judicial doctrine of artificial personhood and money as free speech. Of course, this is not good for the guardians of the status quo set on concentrating governance in the hands of a few. So they, using their considerable resources and relying on tactics of fear and division, falsely paint the movement to amend as liberal, while in reality, support has been shown to be very strong among we the people independent of political affiliation. Protections of the status quo are attempting to incite when they disingenuously pronounce that the purpose of this proposed amendment is to vastly expand totalitarian governance, when exactly the opposite is true. This chicken little apprehension they set forth has absolutely no historical support and contradicts well-established constitutional protections of freedom of the press, religion, and assembly, none of which are even remotely threatened by this proposed amendment, as these protections predate the judicial doctrine of corporate personhood by at least a century. To succeed in securing an amendment, we must overcome the divisive tenor of political discourse set by radio and TV talking heads. We must come to reappreciate each other as fellow citizens and begin to realize that we have much, much more in common with one another than we do with those who strive to use artificial entities to concentrate political power. The corruption of our electoral process by concentrated power is the root cause of our cross-partisan dissatisfaction with Washington. We must refuse the divisive bait set out by those protecting the status quo. We must investigate, we must think critically, and we must get personally involved. It is time for all Americans to come together with solidarity unseen for decades to demand that our electoral elected officers, restore sanity and our electoral process and integrity to legislation bodies. We call upon our commissioners today to stand in solidarity with the sovereignty of we the people and pass this resolution calling for an end to the false notion of judicial artificial personhood and money as free speech.
I have a motion to adopt the resolution.
I think James Novak was wanting to say something.
Yeah. Are you through, Mr. Lomax?
Sorry, what?
Are you through?
Yes,
Mr. Novak, I think.
Mr. Novak, are you going to speak?
Novak.
Novak?
Are you going to speak now or later, Mr. Novak?
I'll speak later, sir. Thank you.
We have before us resolution R-1217, which is a resolution to amend the Constitution of the United States. I have a motion from Mr. Cowell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'd like to discuss a few points of interest on this. I need a little explanation as to why, first of all, I went to the Move to Amend website, and there's at least three iterations of proposed or model resolutions that are to be presented dependent upon the case or dependent upon the situation or organization as to which they are being presented. One is for a university, college setting. The other is for settings such as ours here. The other is for a ballot, for it to be put on the ballot. And the model for the university or college resolution is very interesting to me because, in reading your proposed resolution to us here, it conveniently skips over this point, but I will briefly read this resolution that was designed for a college setting, which is, I think in everyone's view, is probably a more liberal setting. This particular line here, whereas the corporatization of the university leads to efforts against clerical, food service, and maintenance workers, as well as some professional staff on campus through privatization and union decertification campaigns, including effort by universities to outsource services previously performed in-house, such as maintenance of grounds and buildings, travel services, motor pools, food service, and the operation of bookstores. Okay, we go over here to a little section called Get Involved, Don't Just Sit There and Fume, Join the Movement. And the statement is made, join the scores of community organizations, labor unions, political parties, and cities and town governments that are passing resolutions, joining Move to Amend and calling for a constitutional amendment. Now, if labor unions are included in on this proposed amendment, why are they signing on to support this amendment? That is counterintuitive.
Would you like me to address that?
No.
You don't want me to address it? And you're going to
Not
Not
yet?
now.
No.
So, because I've got the floor. Well, excuse me. But also, whereas corporations are engaging in a broad attack on the mission of the university, blurring the lines between the university and the corporate world, and attempting to shape faculty research in the direction of corporate priorities, including an elevation of receiving corporate grants into major criteria for evaluating faculty performance. Okay, if you're going to give a grant to a university or college, do you not want to make sure that the grant is being used for the purposes that it was given? You don't go out here and give money with no strings attached. Okay, in the move to amend proposed 28th Amendment to the Constitution, Section 2, federal, state, and local government shall regulate, limit, or prohibit contributions and expenditures, including a candidate's own contributions and expenditures for the purpose of influencing in any way the election of any candidate for public office or any ballot measure. So they're prohibiting individuals, this amendment would prohibit an individual from spending his own money. Now, is that the American way of doing things? Prohibit me from spending my money. When I ran my campaign, I spent my own money. To me, that lessens the ability for corruption by a person spending their own money, because there's no influence, outside influence. But you would be eliminating that option. And I think that's pretty much all I have to say.
Mr. Chairman, I can't take any responsibility for what somebody put on somebody's website, but I do know what this resolution says. It says essentially that we would like to change things where the corporations cannot spend unlimited amount of money and buy airtime, television time, monopolize it, where the other side can't even speak. And just about all the vestiges of Jeffersonian democracy, as the forefathers intended it, are almost gone now. Let's not let this last one gobble up the country.
That's my point exactly.
Excuse me,
You're limited it to one entity.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Do we not get to respond to this?
No, sir, you do not.
That's free speech.
You've got time at the end of the meeting. We have a motion.
No, you asked me
Excuse me,
not to
Mr.
speak
Lomax.
in this meeting.
Excuse me.
Excuse you.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Cowan,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Elders,
No.
Commissioner Cody,
No.
Chairman Debnam.
No. Next item.
Good afternoon. I know you're concerned about protecting the rights of your constituents and preserving the sanctity of our elections. So I have an update for you on how the Move to Amend campaign is progressing nationwide. There are now more than 250 cities, towns, and counties nationwide who've passed resolutions similar to the one we've offered to you. This is almost double the number I reported to you at our last meeting 2 weeks ago. Since your last meeting, the state legislature of Rhode Island has joined with New Mexico, Hawaii, Vermont in voting to petition the U.S. Congress to pass an amendment that reverses the Supreme Court's decision on Citizens United, bans corporate personhood, and enables the regulation of political campaign contributions from corporations, labor unions, and other artificial entities, preserving human rights for human beings alone. Since your last meeting, a similar resolution has passed the House of Representatives of California, in the Senate of Iowa, joining Alaska as states in which it has passed in one house and is pending in the other. The states of New York and Massachusetts have legislative committees drawing up resolutions to be introduced shortly, joining Washington State, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, who have already introduced the legislation. And since your last meeting, there's one more state in which a move to amend resolution has been introduced in both houses of its state legislature. It's the first state in the Southeast to rise in this tidal wave. It's the great state of North Carolina, in which last Tuesday the legislation was filed as House Bill 1201 and Senate Bill 937. I personally spoke to legislators in both parties in the General Assembly who are in support of passing this legislation. I'm sure you'll be glad to know that there are elected officials in both parties in North Carolina and throughout the nation who are interested and willing to take the steps to protect the rights of their constituents to free, fair, and honest elections. Thank you.
James Nowak.
Mr. Freeman, you left out Montana. You left out Montana.
Montana, thank you.
Commissioners, at the last commissioners meeting, I talked about what does not work. Today I'll say why. There's an old saying, if you give them an inch, there's an old saying, if you give them an inch, they will take a mile. For over 100 years, many Supreme Court decisions have been giving inches to greedy road corporations. In 2010, the majority in the U.S. Supreme Court Citizen United decision gave those road corporations a mile. They crossed the line. The Apostle Paul said in 1 Timothy 6:10, "For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." Wasn't Paul really talking about greed? Wasn't he saying eons ago that greed is the root of all evil? Webster's dictionary defines greedy as wanting or taking all that one can get with no thought to what others need. Any good psychologist will tell you that greed is one result of the subconscious fear of scarcity. Money itself is just a tool, a certificate of exchange. To conclude that money equals speech requires some seriously twisted mental gymnastics. I heard a phrase of praise for greed. It was vulture capitalism, where the wealthy ate very well and it was austerity for everyone else. Austerity is where you get to pretend that you enjoy donating the skin off of your bones. I've also learned that greed is an obsessive desire to attempt to nourish the needs of life when one's heartfelt love of life has been lost. Like the Apostle Paul points out, the love of money steals the love of life away from one's heart. So there you have a choice between the love of money and the love of life. If you attempted to replace the love of life with money, how much money would it take to make you happy? An infinite amount of money, and you would still have the fear that scarcity is just around the corner. Occupiers are a diverse group of people with a wide range of abilities and objectives. But three things we have in common are: we know we have hearts and souls. We love life in America way more than money, and we exercise our consciences regularly. This is why I say Occupy is the heart of America. Normal, conscientious corporations are a reflection of the good-hearted people that occupy and run them. Greedy road corporations don't think they have a heart of soul, so they will take yours if they can. You load 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't call me because I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. Yes, Tennessee Ernie Ford owned 16 tons, even though he did not write it. When you sing a song of truth from your heart, you own it. 20 million records, and one of the best sellers of all time says that 16 tons resonated with America and occupied America's heart. Joe Cowan and Mark Jones have the courage to sing truth from their hearts. They know what resonates with the majority of their constituents. I thank them for voting their conscience on this resolution to amend the Constitution. Corporations are not equal to people. Money is not speech. These are just more fool's gold deals demanded by the road company stores. They are trying to own your soul because they know all the money in the world is not enough to make up for the love of life they have lost. Let's try to help these road corporations get their priorities in order. Let's move to amend our Constitution. Thank you all.